Hi everybody, my name is Brian Sun, and today I'll be doing a quick psychoanalysis of my book, Frying Plantain. So let's get started. Before I actually get into the definitions of psychoanalysis, let's do a quick summary of my book. Frying Plantain by Zalika Benta is set in modern downtown Toronto and focuses on emotions and family struggles. Through a series of short stories, readers follow the life of Cara Davis, a Jamaican-Canadian girl in a progressive journey to adulthood. Readers are also introduced to a small yet prominent cast of characters, such as Alois, her single mother, along with Nana and George, her grandparents. Benta manages to express the struggles of adolescence and the copings of dealing with a problematic family. As Kara matures, she discovers more about her identity and how she deals with the dysfunctional relationship within her family, herself included. This novel showcases the copings of emotional distress, intimate relationships, and constant surveillance caused by Kara's mother. Benta manages to bring awareness of the struggles for children living with parents with authoritative demeanors. So that was just a really quick summary and a very organized summary of my book. And now let's actually get into definitions of psychoanalysis. So what is psychoanalysis, you may ask? Well, psychoanalysis is the analysis of the unconscious mind, and a large portion of this is actually studying the three distinctions of the psyche. So that includes the id, superego, and the ego. But another portion of psychoanalysis is actually studying personality. So this includes emotional disorders, mental health, and copings for those issues. So how is psychoanalysis actually present in Frying Plantain? Well, in Kara's family, there's a lot of family dynamics. So this includes herself, Alois, Verna, also called Nana, and George. And while in this family, Kara actually manages to, she actually copes with a lot of struggles, and this involves emotional distress, intimate relationships, and constant surveillance that she receives from her mother. And why is it from her mother? Well, it's because she actually shows a lot of authoritative behavior towards her child, and that actually causes Kara to undergo many mental struggles, which we will go further in depth. So by taking a psychoanalytic view of this book, we actually see that one of the mental struggles that Kara suffers with is actually emotional distress. So for one of the examples of emotional distress, we actually do need a little bit of context. So Alois and Kara is actually kicked out of their old house and Nana actually ends up taking them in. But after some time, because of their misbehavior and messing up Nana's morning routines, Nana actually ends up taking the liberty to kick both of them out. And because of this tough financial situation, Alois actually retaliates. And while she goes back into the room to pick up their baggage, she argues with Nana and ends up tearing a lot of antiques that are placed around the house. And she almost ends up tearing down a very priceless item that she has up, hanged up on her wall. And because Kara is at such a young age at this time, she actually suffers from very great emotional pain. She's watching her two mother figures argue right in front of her without being really able to do anything. She's just standing there crying, and we can actually see a very notable quote that we have from Kara. So it reads, "I stood on the stoop and watched, holding back tears, knowing my mother would scream at me later if she caught me crying. I didn't speak for the rest of the night. My mother's rage ran deep. I knew from experience that silence was the best way to maintain peace." So in this significant quote, she actually realizes, she actually starts to realize the functions in her family, and realizing this and witnessing this up front causes great emotional distress for her. Another mental struggle that Kara suffers with is actually maintaining relationships, and whether that be as romantic relationships or family relationships. And for this example is that Lois actually does not want Kara to be in a romantic relationship because, for her case, she actually ended up caring for Kara at a very young age of 17 because she was actually abandoned by her ex-boyfriend when she got pregnant. So Kara actually knows of the situation that Lois ended up caring for her at a very young age, and when she develops feelings for another boy from another school, she purposely hides her relationship in front of Alois. But Alois actually is suspicious of this. She actually knows that Kara's being very careful, and what Alois does is that she kind of breaches her boundaries. she actually breaches Kara's privacy and constantly asks questions, making up purposeful lies to actually bait out the truth from her, and starts examining every behavior that she puts out in her house. So, so that Kara can actually kind of hint at her secret. And it's very clear when Kara says in this quote, "I looked at her next to me. Even asleep, her face was stern and active. She just didn't take her eyes off of me, serving me so I could stew in guilt." So it's very clear that in this quote, or practically in the scene, that Kara is very frustrated as Lois is kind of taking this authoritative behavior to an extreme, breaching her privacy, and Kara basically feels that, she's not having this privacy that she deserves. And finally, the last struggle that Kara has to deal with is actually Aloy's very strict surveillance. Kara in the scene secretly drinks without giving her mother any notice at all, and when she comes back to her house, Alois figures out because of her obvious drunken appearance. And what happens is that she lashes out at her daughter. She curses, she yells across the house, and Kara at this point has all this built-up anger for her, and what ends up is just that she just ends up running away to the subway station just to relieve her emotions. And while she's there, because of Aloysius' very strict surveillance and control of nature, she ends up calling Kara's phone 26 times. And when Kara finally picks up, she's threatened with a police call, and even goes as far as to saying that she'll kill her. And what happens is that Kara cracks under this pressure. She finally releases all this built-up anger and admits to being restricted of her freedom because of her mother's very authoritative nature. And in this quote, she makes it very, very clear. My call display lit up with word "Mom" for her 26th call. Her heavy breathing made my throat tighten and my thumb itch to press the end button. So here in this very climactic scene, we can definitely see that she admits to the struggles of being with Alois, and this is a very climactic moment that we see from her. So what have we learned, in conclusion? By taking on the psychoanalytic view, we are all able to study or more focus on like the personality aspect of this book. All the emotional disorders and mental health and the copings that Kara has to deal with throughout the story. And by taking this theory into use, readers are able to identify all the struggles of living under someone with authoritative and controlling behavior. And this is very evident because throughout Kara's life, we see a lot of emotional outbursts and a lot of breakdowns that happen throughout this book just because of Lois's, very authoritative behavior. And we can also see how she struggles to maintain her own privacy, and by the end of the book, at the very climactic moments, she has a very difficult time keeping her sense of sanity alive. So in the end, Salika Ribenta manages to bring great awareness of the difficulties that young children experience when living with an overprotective and abusive parent. So that is my, basically like summarized psychoanalysis view on Frying Plantain, and thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great day.